the weirdest addictions humans have ever had. Somewhere right now, someone is addicted to eating ice cubes until their teeth crack, someone else can't stop pulling out their own eyebrows one hair at a time, and somewhere else, a guy is mint cream in a public library and he has absolutely no idea why. No cap. These are all real documented addictions and they get weirder from here. Let's get into it. Pagophagia, ice eating addiction. If you thought of just chewing on ice cubes when you were bored when you heard pagophagia, then you would be correct. But this isn't just regular ice chewing. This is way crazier than your cousin who chews the ice at the bottom of her drink. Honestly, a good nickname of this would be glacier gooning. But in case you're unfamiliar, let me recap quickly. Pagophagia is a real diagnosable compulsive ice eating addiction, and from every account I've seen, it's almost always linked to an iron deficiency, which makes this whole thing even weirder because your body is essentially manifesting a craving as a coping mechanism for something it's missing internally. The bar for normal ice chewing is so low that even mild cases of pagophagia blow right past it. People with this aren't just chewing ice at a restaurant. We're talking multiple bags a day, every day, to the point where some have permanently cracked their molars trying to satisfy it. This addiction is iron deficiency anemia's crackhead cousin. For all intents and purposes, it's one of the most cursed feedback loops the human body has ever invented because the craving doesn't even feel optional. One woman on a health forum wrote that she went through 2 full bags of ice a night just to fall asleep, and skipping it made her feel, quote, itchy under my skin in a way nothing else fixed. If you thought ice eating was just an aura points habit to look cute while sipping an iced coffee, think again, because this disorder has put people in the dentist chair for full tooth reconstructions. Definitely not the kind of 8 we're trying to manifest here. Trichotillomania, compulsive hair pulling. Like many of the obscure compulsions on this list, finding casual information on trichotillomania is genuinely difficult, and that's because it's not something most people openly admit to. It's basically a body-focused repetitive behavior disorder where someone feels an overwhelming, almost magnetic urge to pull out their own hair, scalp, eyebrows, eyelashes, you name it, to the point of visible bald patches. The wild part is that most people who have it describe a buildup of tension beforehand, almost like an itch climbing up your spine, and then this insane wave of relief the second they pull. Basically, the brain is treating self-inflicted hair loss like a reward system, which is one of the most cursed loops the human nervous system has ever cooked up. No cap, that's genuinely diabolical engineering on evolution's part. In online trichotillomania support communities, one user wrote that they didn't even realize they'd been doing it for 2 straight hours during a stressful work call and only noticed when they looked down and saw a small pile of hair in their lap. Another wrote, quote, I've apologized to my eyebrows more times than I've apologized to actual people in my life. This condition reportedly affects somewhere around 1 to 2% of people at some point in their lives, which sounds small until you realize that's millions of people quietly dealing with this without anyone around them ever clocking it. Excoriation by proxy, pet hair pulling. This next one is so under the radar that I genuinely wasn't expecting to find documented cases when I started researching, but apparently there's a small recorded phenomenon of people developing the same compulsive pulling behavior such as trichotillomania, except directed at their pet's fur instead of their own hair. I want to be clear that this isn't abuse in the traditional sense that most people think of. The people experiencing this describe the identical anxiety tension relief loop, just redirected onto a living, breathing, very confused golden retriever. In a handful of forum posts on pet owner mental health communities, people describe feeling intense shame admitting this, with one writing, quote, I don't even realize I'm doing it until my dog looks back at me confused, and another saying they started keeping their hands occupied with stress balls specifically to keep them away from their cat. This is genuinely one of the rarest, weirdest little corners of compulsive behavior research that exists, and most psychologists have never encountered a case of it directly. If this doesn't prove the human brain can find a cursed loophole around literally any boundary, I don't know what does. Dermatillomania, Compulsive skin picking. Dermatillomania is trichotillomania's equally cursed sibling, except instead of hair, the target is skin, picking at real or perceived imperfections until it causes actual tissue damage, scarring, and in some extreme cases, infections that require medical attention. This isn't popping a pimple in the mirror. This is a full nervous system hijack where stopping feels almost physically impossible mid-episode. People with dermatillomania can spend upwards of several hours a day picking, often entering something close to a trance state when they completely lose track of time. One person on a skin picking support forum described it as, quote, like watching myself do it from outside my body and not being able to make my hands stop even though I was begging myself to. The truly diabolical part is that picking temporarily soothes anxiety, which means the brain rewards the exact behavior that's doing the damage, creating one of the most self-defeating feedback loops a person can be locked into. Skin bleaching addiction. This one's heavier than the rest of the list, so I want to walk into it carefully because it deserves to be talked about with actual weight instead of as a punchline. Skin bleaching addiction refers to a compulsive, escalating use of skin lightening products, sometimes cosmetic creams, sometimes much harsher, unregulated chemicals, driven by a deep, often culturally reinforced belief that lighter skin equals more value, more beauty, more opportunity. Researchers and dermatologists have documented this as functioning similarly to other compulsions on this list. A person starts using a product to address one specific concern, and over time the goalpost keeps moving, application becomes more frequent, and stopping starts to feel emotionally unbearable even when the user is fully aware of the physical damage being done. What makes this addiction uniquely brutal is that the harm compounds quietly. Long-term use of certain bleaching agents has been linked by dermatology researchers to skin thinning, permanent discoloration, increased vulnerability to infection, and in cases involving products containing mercury or high-dose steroids, broader health complications affecting the kidneys and nervous system. Because the visible effects take months or years to show up, by the time damage is undeniable, the psychological dependency is often already deeply rooted. People who've struggled with this describe a familiar emotional pattern, a temporary boost of confidence after use, followed by a fading of that confidence that pushes them right back to the product, the exact tension then relief loop we've seen throughout this video, just in a completely different cultural and emotional context. One dermatology study described patients who continued using known harmful bleaching agents specifically because stopping felt, in their words, like losing the only thing that made people look at me differently. This isn't a vanity issue, and it isn't something to joke about. It intersects with colorism, beauty standards, and in some regions, a genuine lack of regulation on what's even allowed to be sold over the counter. Public health officials in several countries have pushed for stricter standards on mercury-based bleaching products specifically because of how widespread and dangerous unsupervised long-term use has become. Before we get into the final entry, quick note. This was originally a top 10, not a top 5, but for time, we split it in half. The second part is, no cap, even heavier than this. If you want part 2, let me know down in the comments, and if this hits 20,000 likes, we'll lock it in. Classomania, compulsive shouting addiction. I know what you might be thinking. Classomania sounds like a fake word your group chat made up at 2 a.m., but no, this is an actual documented condition where someone develops an uncontrollable urge to shout, scream, or vocalize loudly, completely detached from any emotional trigger. Unlike a tic, which tends to be short and reflexive, classomania episodes build tension exactly like the hair pulling and skin picking compulsions earlier on this list. Pressure builds, 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 and then releases in a sudden, often startling outburst the person had basically no ability to suppress. One documented case described a man who had let out sudden shouts in completely silent environments like libraries and churches, leading him to avoid public spaces entirely, not because he was embarrassed by noise itself, but because the compulsion felt like it was hijacking his nervous system on a randomized timer. What makes this one of the most isolating entries on this list is that it's so rare and misunderstood that people experiencing it are frequently mistaken for being intentionally disruptive, when in reality, it's running on the exact same involuntary loop as everything else we've just talked about. No riz, no manifestation, no amount of locking in can override a nervous system glitch like this. All in all, I'd wager even the most hardcore psych nerds out there haven't heard of at least one of these. To summarize, don't assume clean eating can't quietly become its own addiction. Don't assume hair pulling, skin picking, or skin bleaching are just surface level habits, because no cap, they're legitimately hardwired psychological loops. And don't joke on people dealing with stuff you don't fully understand. That's an instant aura points deduction. If this video taught you anything, let it be that the human brain is one of the most cursed pieces of software ever shipped, and somehow it's still in beta. If you want part 2, drop a comment, smash that like button, and make sure you're locked in and subscribed to the No Cap crew. That's the only way you're not missing the next one. See you in the next video.